We have a fantastic discussion coming up on fostering innovation. I'm going to double up the mics here. So we're going to do 4 presentations, then we're going to have a brief discussion of the themes that come up. What I might do is just encourage people to kind of come forward, and then after the presentations we can have something of a sort of discussion as a group so that we're opening that up. So we're going to hear from Gillian Docherty, who's the CEO of the Data Lab, from Amy Williams, who's the founder and CEO of Goodloop, from Zoe Webster, who's the Director of AI and the Data Economy at UKRI, and from Chris Wright, who's the CTO of Moixa. Am I saying that right, Chris? Boom. Okay, brilliant. So without further ado, there is a clicker right here. Gillian, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Chris. And I'd just like to echo my thanks for hanging on in there. It is 5 o'clock and it's been a long, wet, as they say, dreich day in Scotland. So good for you. I'm delighted to be here and to represent the Data Lab and some of the work that we're doing in Scotland. And I'm going to just touch a little bit on what we do. So the Data Lab is Scotland's innovation centre for data science and AI. We are, on the whole, publicly funded. But our mission is to help maximise the value of data for Scotland, which is a big mission. It's something that gets myself and my team up, eager and excited every single morning to try and make a difference. And we get involved in lots of different things, and I'm going to just talk you through a few examples of some of the way that we are working with both industry and public sector and academia in Scotland to help innovate using data science and AI. So what we do 3 real pillars of activity: collaborative innovation, skills and training, and community building. And essentially they represent that support to innovate, skills and community. So in terms of support to innovate, essentially what we do is we perform a guidance role for organisations who are looking to build new products or services or build productivity or optimisation benefits for their organisations. We provide a matching function for those industry or public sector partners to academics in Scotland. So we have some of the world's best academics who work with global companies and export their talent all around the world. And our challenge and task is to get them working with the industry and company down the street. We support cohorts and companies to bid into Innovate UK and to other funding goals, and Zoe will tell you a little bit more about that, and provide resources from our data science team onto projects. On the funding element, we have a small fund that we can use to buy out academic time. And over the last 4 years, we've invested in over 100 projects. And those projects range massively from startups to large multinationals to large parts of our public sector. And really, I'll give you a few examples because that's what brings it to life. So we've been working with the Beatson's Cancer Hospital. It's Scotland's largest cancer unit. And we've been working with academics from Strathclyde University, building algorithms and computer vision technology to delineate tumours from healthy tissues for complex neck cancers. We've been working with a legal startup who were building a claims management dispute platform and using natural language processing to analyse all previous case law and then statistical modelling to give you the probability of success of your claim before you even engage a lawyer. All the way through to working with a subsea pipeline inspection company who were using computer vision algorithms to automatically annotate high-definition video feed from the seabed as ROVs fly over pipelines and energy cables to spot things like field joints and degradation in the cable automatically, rather than a human sitting on a boat and then annotating the video themselves. So that's just 3 examples of the kind of projects that we've been involved in. And it's great to support organisations on their journey, to provide that matching process with any academic from across Scotland's fantastic universities, or to deploy our data science team onto those projects to run pilots or proof of concepts. Now, the companies that we've worked with are predicting an increase in their revenue of over £105 million and the creation of over 350 high-value jobs as an outcome of the projects that we've done. And it's great to be able to showcase that and showcase that innovation, so bringing considering the stage that we're in, from the labs, from research, into live production applications. So that's the first pillar of activity that we do. I think the second pillar is skills and talent. And one of the things we realised really early on, and many of you will know this, the biggest inhibitor in this space to innovating is getting access to the right skills and talent. So over the last 4 years, we've been investing in helping to create and nurture and develop that talent. And that includes sponsored master's students, so where we have funded the studentships for a number of master's students. We've grown that programme from 40 students in our first year across 3 universities to this year I have 155 students across 11 universities and 23 different master's courses. And we pull that cohort together for meta-skill training, for introduction to industry, for a challenge innovation week that happened last week in Glasgow actually, and it was rainy there too, right through to placement opportunities to run their master's dissertations in industry. And this week we have 100 of those students out across industry in Scotland, from Chevron to Glasgow City Council to the NHS and to various startups around the ecosystem in Edinburgh and Glasgow. We also can co-fund doctorate programmes, so PhDs and engineering doctorates. And the engineering doctorate, which we piloted with St Andrews, had never been done before in the subject field of data science. And that's because the researchers spend 80% of their time in industry working on real problems and are awarded their doctorate on the back of that programme. Right through to partnering to run continuous professional development, both data science boot camps, introduction to machine learning, data visualisation courses, right through to our executive education, where over the last 18 months we've taken 1,200 people through the opportunity that data presents for senior business leaders. How do you get your board to invest? Why is it important? Where are you in the maturity curve? What do I do next? Those questions that many C-suite ask, and many of you in the room will have been in the situation where a C-suite has said to their CIO, go and get some of that AI stuff, that's what we need. Or actually, I want you to go and hire 20 data scientists. We're going to throw our data over the wall and they're going to tell us something we don't know. So part of our role is telling them to hang on, hold on. That's not quite how you do it. That's not how you get the best out of either the data scientists that you may well hire or the best for your business. So it's been really exciting to work right across that suite. And then at the other end of the scale, supporting the other agencies on building modern apprenticeships and graduate level apprenticeships for data analysts and data scientists, and right down to supporting organisations who work in schools. So we were really honoured earlier this year to work with primary and secondary engineers, and we launched a programme called Stat Wars, which was a competition for 10 to 12-year-olds using film view data to design the next movie hit. So it's very much like the Netflix model. And it was great to see the presentations from these group of 10-year-olds, and they'd made up badges for themselves. I am a data scientist. I am a visualization expert. And it was really motivating to see, actually, we need to seed that future talent if we're really going to maximise the opportunity from data. And finally is our community and events programme, where we run a 2-week data festival right across Scotland in March. This year we had 65 events and 4,500 people participate, 500 school kids all the way through to ministerial events and everything in between. And it was just really good to see the whole country energised. I mean, we had ballistic data sets from the Leverhulme Forensics Institute. What's not to get excited about getting your hands on that type of data? And it's been great to run trips, data learning journeys with Scottish Development International, to support cohorts from all around the world that are coming to Scotland to see what's going on there, to work in building foreign direct investment opportunities for companies saying, I need to build a data team, where am I going to do it? Well, my answer is in Scotland. And with that, I'm going to hand over to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Amy. I'm the founder and CEO of Goodloop. Goodloop is actually a Scottish business, and my CTO has worked quite closely with the data lab, so segue. Hopefully, yes, cool, smooth. So, as I said, we come from Scotland. Goodloop was founded in Edinburgh in October 2016. And as you can hear, I am not Scottish. I'd been working in London at a big ad agency called Ogilvy. Ogilvy worked with big brands like British Gas, British Airways, Unilever. So I'd been learning a lot about the industry. And my co-founder, Daniel, he'd been living in Scotland, working, he did a PhD in artificial intelligence from Edinburgh University, and then he started Winterwell Associates, which was building white label advertising technology software, which used AI to basically creepily follow you around the internet. So I'd been working in making adverts, and he'd been working in ad tech using AI. So we'd come from very, very different worlds and very different perspectives, but we both sort of realized the same sort of broken element of the industry. And it was really illustrated by this scandal last year with Cambridge Analytica completely damaging the public's trust in how they manage their data. And you look at things like ad blockers. We have 600 million devices using ad blockers worldwide, and it grows 30% year on year. So the relationship between advertisers and the human beings they're trying to advertise to is inherently broken. I had an idea which was, there's a lot of money in advertising, there's so much money, and if we could use some of that money to actually fix some of these issues, then you could make a hell of a lot of good happen in the world. So I went on a website called workinstartups.com. It's like a forum, you post ideas about businesses, and I wrote a post that said, I have no money, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I have this idea around using this big market of advertising, creating a more respectful and meaningful relationship between the consumer and the advertiser, and get in touch if you want to work with me. A lot of weirdos replied to that text, a lot of strangers, but one guy in particular, Daniel, based in Edinburgh, said, yeah, I think I could probably help you with that. So much to my mum's she was just completely terrified about this, but I flew up to Scotland to meet a man I met on the internet, and he didn't kill me, he actually founded a business with me, and we decided together to use ad money to solve the world's problems. It's quite a lofty goal, but we're on our way to doing that. And the reason that using ad money to solve the world's problems is actually realistic is that being a good brand, being an advertiser that represents social issues, more important sort of social, environmental issues that consumers care about, is because the data backs it up. If you look at surveys around why people connect with brands, a huge part of that is the social values that they illustrate. 89% said they were more likely to buy from a company leading with values, and it will also increase their loyalty. And Unilever, they have social brands. So Dove would be an example of a social brand where they talk about championing real beauty and challenging fake beauty standards. So they found that their sustainable and social brands grow 50% faster than their non-social brands. Because soap is boring, but talking about like challenging beauty standards is important and interesting. And so it's a really powerful message, and I think it's quite exciting to think about how being a good business can also be good for business. So I'll briefly explain how Goodloop works. We take adverts that advertisers are already running on YouTube, on TV. We wrap it in what we call our ethical ad player. So this is an interactive ad format which has a 15-second countdown along the bottom. Once you watch the ad for 15 seconds without pressing that very tempting skip button, you then unlock a donation funded by the advertiser, and you can choose which charity to give it to. So this example is with Doombar. Doombar are a Cornish beer. They're all brewed down in Cornwall. They're very proud of that heritage. So when you watch the Doombar ad, you unlock a donation to Surfers Against Sewage, which is a Cornish charity, and you can choose if you want to fund beach cleanups or their schools initiative or their Safer Surfers initiative. So the user gets a little bit of choice. You get to do good for free just by watching an ad. And we also run on social channels with a swipe up to donate message or the swipe down to select a charity message on some premium publishers as well. So we run across all different websites, all different social channels, and all you have to do to engage, all you have to do to donate is give some of your time. It doesn't just do good, though, and I think that's one of the things I've learned building this business, is if you build an ethical company just because you're a good person, you're never going to make any money. So you have to really drive, first and foremost, from the benefits to the business, thinking about what is it the advertiser is looking for and how can I deliver ROI for them. You're going back to my point at the beginning around how you can be a good business and also that can be good business. So driving results like completed view rates is an important way that we illustrate you're not just donating because you're a good person, you're using Good Loop because it actually drives higher engagement with your content. And we also look at brand uplift, so we'll send retargeting studies to people that have been advertised to, and we'll ask them, to what extent do you think of Kit Kat as a charitable brand, or to what extent do you think of Pepsi as aligning with your values? And we find a real shift away from negative responses and towards positive responses, which is a really important illustration of what I think is the underpinning of my business, which is that you can be both ethical and effective in your marketing. Purpose and performance don't have to be an either-or decision. You can have both, especially in today's world where consumers are driving their purchase decisions based on their social values. So in summary, Good Loop connects brands with purpose in a way that is scalable because we plug into global programmatic advertising, effective because we deliver 75% higher engagement, and impactful because we literally fund good causes with every view. So that's us. Thank you.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Zoe Webster. I'm Director for AI and Data Economy at Innovate UK. I'm going to say a bit more about what we do to support innovation in the UK, and then I'll add at the end some shameless plugs for some of our funding opportunities open to you all. So Innovate UK is part of a relatively new organisation called UK Research and Innovation. It started life in April 2018. It brings together Innovate UK with the 7 research councils and with a new body called Research England, which is part of HEFGI. Our job is to support world-leading research and innovation in the UK, to maintain and strengthen the UK's position in R&D. We're there for economic impact, for social impact, environmental impact, but also to generate new knowledge and to see where that takes us. And hopefully a lot of that will take us to huge positive benefits for everyone. So there are lots of new ideas floating about, both in the research space and in business, and we're there to help bring those out and get them to make that impact. So Innovate UK is primarily the business-facing part of UK research and innovation, and what we really care about alongside those other things is around economic growth. So we want businesses like yours to grow hugely in the UK, and you'll hear about one in more detail shortly. So we help companies by funding them. Many people know us for providing grants, where we share the cost of R&D with you, with other partners. We also more recently provide other funding solutions. It's not all about money though, some of it's about connections and introducing you to partners, customers, investors, other people like-minded in the community that you can meet and spark ideas from. A bit perhaps safer than the text and going to fly off to see someone you've never met, but that sounds fun. So we fund and connect, and we cover the whole of the UK, not just the Golden Triangle. So we've got a good track record in terms of delivering impact. I'll skip over these very quickly, but we measure ourselves by how many companies we're helping, how many jobs being created, how much value add to the economies it's generating. So it's all really important that we track what we do. But as you can see, we've helped a lot of organisations in over 11,000 different projects. Now, many of you will know about the industrial strategy that was set out by the government. We are a key partner in delivering that industrial strategy. Ideas was one of the 5 pillars that was set out, and ideas is what we're all about in terms of making money out of those ideas. The strategy also set out 4 grand challenges, and of course we're here today to talk about AI and data specifically, but I would argue that AI and data underpins the other 3 very strongly. So that's ageing society and thinking about the technologies and the business models that might allow us all to pay for the care that we will all need eventually. Clean growth, so whether we're driving more cars, we're flying more planes, we want energy that is there when we need it, but done in a very sustainable way. And the future of mobility, being driven around by driverless cars potentially, powered by batteries that are perhaps built or developed in the UK. Lots of opportunities there. But as I said, AI and data really underpins them all. And actually for us, AI and data itself is underpinned by many different technologies, whether that's 5G, satellite communications, cybersecurity, all sorts of other technologies. Now, I've mentioned a few ways we help with innovation, and Chris will shortly tell you about how our grants can help a company to grow. We've more recently been providing loans through a pilot, a £50 million pilot, and that's been going very well. I think that money's been deployed now. We're looking at how that has helped those businesses and whether or not we should do more of that. There's SBRI, which I'll mention a bit later, which is where we help government departments who have problems to solve. They need to procure new innovations, not available on the shelf. So we work with them to frame the challenge, to put it in a way that businesses across the economy will get excited about and will respond with their solutions. And also, as I said, it's not all about money, it's partly about connectivity. So the Knowledge Transfer Network and the catapults, which I'll talk about in a moment, are there to help people reach out and find what they need when they need it. So a couple of examples I wanted to set out in terms of the catapults, because I think they illustrate something interesting about AI and what else apart from money can help. So the Digital Catapult has launched something called, so I should take a step back, sorry, Catapult is a physical technology or innovation centre that is there to help people get access to facilities, equipment, skills, expertise they might need to innovate. We've got 9 around the UK, one of which is called Digital, but we've got others in offshore renewable energy, high-value manufacturing, satellite applications, a few others. And this one in particular, Digital Catapult, has AI as one of its key priorities. They're based in Euston. They also look at future networking and immersive technologies, and they're also looking at how AI interplays with those technologies more recently. But here they have something called the Machine Intelligence Garage, because they recognise that for many companies, it was access to compute power that was limiting their growth, particularly where they're using deep learning, which, as we all know, is very hungry. So they have set up a means with partners to allow companies to bid in, to get hold of the compute power they need, to validate their technologies, to excite investors and to get that investment they need to grow. And that's working incredibly well. It also involves kind of workshops and experimentation events as well to get people thinking about new ideas. So that's something that is one way that we, with the Catapult, are helping to support AI innovation going forward. And as we've heard before as well, data availability is often a limiting factor, and actually this is keenly felt in some of the sectors that the catapults work with. In particular here, we've got the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult, which is playing its role in helping companies who wouldn't normally share data to share data for the benefit of many of them. So, for example, with offshore wind, wave and tidal energy projects, that's huge, heavy equipment that's going out and operating often in harsh conditions. And actually what's needed is for the operators to understand how that's all going, and they need the data for that. And that's data from various assets, from various components that need bringing together in the same place to be properly harnessed. So they're helping provide that access to data, to manage it in a trusted way, and that's the kind of role a catapult can play. But also start to look at what's needed to then crunch that data, what kind of information architectures are needed to crunch that. Some sectors are perhaps further down the line with this than others, but that's what they're doing there, to kind of help diffuse that across their sector. And then, before handing over to Chris, I wanted to talk about some very specific funding opportunities that are open right now that might suit your businesses and you might want to think about applying to. The first one is what we call SMART grants. So these are truly open in scope. They're open to any company in the UK to apply for. We're particularly interested in SMEs in this case. So this could be an SME working alone, or it could be an SME involved in a consortium of partners. you can see that can be for project sizes round about from £25,000 up to £500,000 in the case of a single company, or up to £2 million in a collaborative setting. So this is, again, across the economy. We're not pinned down to any particular technology. It's open to AI as much as any other technology. These are quite competitive, but we do fund the strongest ideas that come forward. If you want any advice about putting an application in, the KTN are there to help, and all the information is on our website. The other competitions I wanted to mention, just in case anyone in the room has a particular interest in this, is using data and digital technology to improve adult social care. We all recognise there's a problem, is an opportunity to potentially help, and I believe that's an SBRI competition, which is 100% funded. The grants, as you can see, is you get a percentage of your project costs back as grants, normally about 75% if you're an SME, but it depends on the competition. Another one, which again is SBRI, is around AI-supported early fracture diagnosis. Again, lots of AI and data technologies that could be of use there. But we have other competitions that might pique your interest. At the moment, we've got some in energy systems. We've got quite a few in energy systems, actually, and immersive technologies as well. But it's also it's always worth looking on our website for the latest opportunities. So shameless plugs over. I'm going to hand over to Chris Wright from Moixa, a company that is growing like Billio and has received a grant from us in the past. So over to Chris to tell your story. Thank you.
Thanks, Zoe. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our journey and also where we've got to a little bit. But we've been working with Innovate for more or less 10 years. More or less, we were involved with one of your very early competitions around deploying kind of technology in manufacturing plants. So just a very quick overview of Moixa and what we do. We're working in the energy space. We have largely two strands of what we do. On the one hand, we make energy storage hardware to go into homes. So it's basically a big battery that goes in. If you have solar panels on your roof, most of that energy would basically be exported to the grid when you're out at work. Now, if you have a big battery there, you can store that energy, and then when you're home in the evening, battery can deliver it to you to use. But if you've got thousands of homes with batteries in, and they're all internet-connected devices, then suddenly you can access a kind of aggregated resource across all of these batteries to deliver a large amount of energy. Individually, they're really quite small devices in electricity grid terms, but as an aggregate, they become quite significant. And that's something which can help to avoid the need to turn on a fossil fuel-powered power station when the grid needs extra energy or balance the grid. And so, on the other hand, we've built a platform that controls many assets, starting with the hardware that we've made, the thousands of things in the UK, and now rolling that out into other domains. So that's where the sort of AI machine learning piece comes in for us, is kind of that optimizing those and predicting what will happen with them, and predicting and managing the best way to deliver value to customers. So just to go back to Innovate. So these are three projects which have been funded by Innovate. The first one actually not funded by Innovate, but managed by Innovate. So it's a European money, but somehow Innovate seemed to manage the whole process. And one thing that I want to kind of make clear is we're a little company. We're now 60 people. When we started getting Innovate grants, we were, I don't know, less than 10. And so at that stage, the opportunity for not only to get some equity-free money to help you fund your product and develop it, but also the opportunity to work with really big players. Because it gives a structure around which you can pack a kind of consortium and say, so if we take the Project Eric there, that started quite some time ago, and at that point, getting British Gas and SSE to come play with us inside a structure and genuinely participate in kind of helping us to make our technology better and to be partners in that was at least as important as the money, to be honest, because actually, you know, that gives a huge amount of credibility as a tiny company. Hey, yeah, we're partnered with British Gas, we're partnered with SSE. That makes a massive difference to what you're doing. So that is, I think, not to be underestimated in the kind of benefits that kind of like doing stuff with Innovate has brought. But it's also really been really great to kind of like have these projects help fund the progress of our company. And so we've done, so the bottom one, Project Eric, we were doing localized energy. So how you can control at a sort of, using our platform at a community level. We had 100 homes in Oxford. So how you can control the energy flows inside of those 100 homes to maximize the amount of renewable energy that community self-consumed, decreasing their reliance on grid energy. And that was kind of also kind of like bringing along, you know, British Gas and SSE and saying, hey, there is another way of thinking about how energy works at a community level. And then we have the FS project, which stands for something completely unpronounceable, which I can never remember. But that one, we were working with some really great partners to deliver a very, very early vehicle-to-grid. So there we're taking the technology that we've developed for static batteries in homes and then saying, okay, now we're going to make that work for batteries in cars. So if you plug those in and you have a bidirectional charger, so you can actually suck energy out of the car as well as push it back, then suddenly you can use the battery that's in your car to balance your home or balance your building. So demonstrating that technology was really great. And then the final one with Hitachi, so again an example of how that sort of structure gives you a chance as a tiny company to work with really big partners and for them to take you seriously and for be, you know, engaged on that level is really key. And that one was doing flexibility market stuff with electric vehicles and static batteries in the Isles of Scilly, off the coast of Cornwall. So just to kind of say, okay, well, so where have we got to with this? So one example of a partner we have is a company that most people in the UK haven't heard of, called Docherty. So they are a large Japanese corporate. It's a very Japanese type of company called the trading houses. So they're kind of, but they're a $100 billion company. So they're bigger than Sony, for example, as a company. And one of the things they do is putting out larger than our systems, about 10 kilowatt hour energy storage systems into homes in Japan. And they're doing about 1,500 of those a month or something. So those are all then managed on our platform. So that's a kind of, we've managed to move from being all about the hardware to being a software play in Japan. And we're now controlling about 70 megawatt hours of storage in Japan through kind of doing a commercial deal. And they explicitly brought us as the sort of brain of their system. So they had a capable battery, but with no intelligence attached to how that managed energy. And so that they bought our platform as the brain of that system. And I think the other thing that they found was that through working with a small company like us, Agile, that they could move much quicker. So we signed a deal with them and took a bit of equity investment from them at Christmas 18 months ago. And by July that year, we had 3,000 of their systems on our platform and we're delivering services, having integrated with their hardware, localized our interface to Japanese, worked with all of their partners and got that out. And so that was, I think much, much quicker than they ever expected that they would be able to get this sort of technology working. And so, that sort of thing can be really fun. And then just this Christmas, we signed a deal with Honda. So taking that experience that we developed in an Innovate project, and that was a key kind of part of our due diligence with Honda, was kind of like, yeah, no, we have done this before. Here's the project results. Here's the thing that we did in this project at small scale. And yes, you can trust us to deliver this for your global ambitions, for how you manage your fleets of cars as you electrify transport. So that was absolutely key, showing those two projects I showed earlier, the FS project, where we demonstrated vehicle to grid, and then the Ours the Silly project, where we demonstrated that we were working with another Japanese corporate, Hitachi, and delivering those services. Those gave us the credibility to say to Honda, yes, we can. And so now we're developing with them a platform to kind of electrify how they think about delivering energy to electric vehicles as they roll out. So that's sort of this year's kind of focus, and really exciting. I've actually got back from Japan yesterday. I'm kind of lost touch of what day it is. Meeting all those partners, moving those all to the next level. And with them, we're starting in Islington, just down the road. So we're doing a little vehicle-to-grid trial. So Islington have realised that they're going to have to electrify all of the cars that they own. They own their whole fleet, including rubbish trucks and stuff, which are a bit harder. So they're starting with the kind of cars that they use around the town hall. And interestingly, so Islington Town Hall is a massive building. But even with only 5 cars kind of parked behind the hall, we can actually take them off-grid, off their baseload. So it's kind of like, there's a huge amount of energy stored in electric vehicles, and delivering that into buildings, balancing it so that both we can try and move the energy to when it's least expensive and lowest carbon, but also occasionally they have a venue as part of the Islington Town Hall, and sometimes when they have a really big rock band, they trip all the circuits, and we can actually prevent that as well. We can kind of like suck energy from the cars and deliver it to the rock bands, perhaps our first vehicle to rock band integration, and deliver that, and then rolling that up next year to 250 sites in West Sussex with another kind of council that's looking to kind of smell the mustard and see that they have to change to zero carbon vehicles. So that's kind of fun. And just very quickly, because I know we should move on to a discussion, but we kind of think about delivering these things in tranches. So delivering value to customers directly through sort of grid share client. We call our platform grid share. Through lovely interfaces and stuff, but also through optimizing the system, using this AI machine learning technology to take all of the data that we have, which is a lot about how people are using energy and generating energy and weather forecasting, all other things, taking that, making a prediction for what will happen home by home, each one at a time tomorrow, and then out of that, we can then say, okay, and what's the best way to use the asset that they've expensively bought to manage their energy and deliver the most value to them? And then we partner with people, so we partner with utilities and energy companies and EV makers and people who make heat storage systems. We partner with those to deliver those services to them. And out of that, if per customer you want to understand how much value you're getting from the system, as a partner, you want to understand how much value you're delivering to all of your customers who we're serving. And then the final thing is, okay, so I've got all of this flexibility on this platform. Now I need to deliver that as a service to the national grid and to energy utility companies and to the DNOs. So that's our services piece of that pie. And then you can kind of see some of the people that we're working with in that space. So Hitachi I've talked about before, Honda I've talked about before, but also Islington Council, a bunch of housing providers, Scottish Power, Northern Power Grid, Centrica. So we're taking that kind of like, gone from being a little company, and we're really kind of growing up in terms of some of the clients that we're actually delivering this to now. And a lot of that, you can see names on there where we've worked with innovation projects in order to enable us to get to that next level. And that's been really kind of very much part of our journey over the last 10 years or so. What we do here is that, I've just spoken about this a little bit, but sort of building recognition of how energy is being used as patterns, making an optimized plan for each system one by one, risk profiling each person. So I sometimes use an example of kind of, so if you're trying to understand how much energy a person's going to use, and what their key to that is understanding what they're going to do tomorrow, then actually a freelance journalist is a very different beast from someone who works for a corporate and goes to work at 7:43 every morning. But understanding that risk is really important, because then you know, okay, I can bid this person into this flexibility service and get this value for them, or no, that's too risky, I have to kind of use them as a backup or whatever. And I won't talk through this, but some of the kind of illustration of some of the kind of how we do that forecasting, and how we then take that and turn that into sort of plans that the systems run to deliver the most value for people, including kind of then taking that prediction and turning it into a forecast for when flexibility is available, and then bidding that back to National Grid or EDF and saying, hey, across our aggregate fleet, here is the flexibility that we can offer you, so you have to pay this money to our customers. And they get to sweat their assets and get more value from that. And we love geeky graphs. And this is really just to say, as a final thing, this is something that we've kind of thought about and worked on for quite some time. So we filed a patent on this in 2008, which is quite a long time ago in this space, where we talked about powering the car using the energy in your car to power your home, aggregating demand-side resources such as domestic loads to deliver flexibility in the home, managing when that energy is used and when it's integrated with renewables. And then we found since then that actually about now more than 200 corporates are forced to cite our patent and reference it, because it's a key early piece of IP in this space. It provides really good leverage for us when we go and say again to kind of Honda or Itochu, hey, yes, we do know what we're talking about in this space. So that's a little kind of journey that we've been on, and really, we're very, very grateful to Innovate for kind of helping us like move down that journey and bring the partnerships that we've had together and give us the money. It's been good.
Thanks, Chris. So why don't you stay there? I'd love to invite the other speakers up on stage as well. I'm going to abuse my position to ask one question, then I'm going to open it up to the audience to ask some more. Fantastic. So what a spread of perspectives we have across this group. It's brilliant. I'm going to ask a really selfish question. Here goes. I have dinner tomorrow evening with a few ministers of AI from different countries. We've heard about what's happening in Scotland. We've heard a bit about what's happening across the UK. Maybe both from the people trying to create communities and people in communities making their own companies happen. If I'm the Minister for AI for country X, what should I do to try and foster the kind of innovation that we've just seen and enjoyed across the 4 talks? Anyone burning, or shall I just pick on Gillian? And tend to hold these mics a little bit closer than, yeah.
Okay. I'd tell them to move to Scotland. No.
For the weather.
Well, absolutely. Hey. I think what we've learned over the last few years has been really interesting. We've not done everything right. We've had to alter the way we create the collaborations, the way that we work and build those partnerships between academia, parts of the public sector and parts of the private sector. I think what's really good about the size and scale of what we do is we can get our arms around it. So I kind of call Scotland, it's like the Goldilocks economy. It's not too big, it's not too small, too hot or too cold. And by being able to get your arms around it, you can make things really happen. Because if you know the data lab, you know what's happening in Scotland. Now, England and the UK is much bigger than that, but how do you create communities that you can get your arms around? Whether you create something in the north, London is just a beast in itself, but I think that's really important. To make the most valuable connections, you need to know what's going on.
Yeah. And maybe, Chris or Amy, any thoughts from the flip side? There's this question about, are innovators born or made? And it feels like you both very clearly have some kind of entrepreneurial spirit, but what's helped you to what's taken the barriers out of your way as you've gone on those journeys?
Well, I think if I was talking to a bunch of innovation, like government AI ministers, then the obvious place to start is open data. Mm-hmm. So publish your data and let people take that and make innovation out of that, and do work that's between that. There's a huge amount of kind of very valuable data locked away, and the government has no idea how to use it. So and the UK government has actually been surprisingly, relatively good at this in parts, and it's led to some really interesting work, some really interesting innovation. So I think if I'm talking a bunch of government people, that's the place to start. And then, offer some challenges up. What are the challenges that you have? Governments will spend gazillions of money on completely useless consultants, and if they gave a tiny fraction of that money to the innovators who are out there,
longitude-esque kind of
yeah, just kind of like there should be perhaps like no one ever got fired for hiring IBM, but maybe no one should be hired for spending 1% of the IBM budget on young companies who are really hungry to prove that they can do amazing stuff.
Got it. Any other thoughts from your perspective? What could government do to take barriers out of your way or to put booster rockets on the back?
So we've had a lot of support from various different organisations within Scotland, and one of the things I've been really impressed by is how open the approach is. I often worried that when we took funding from Scottish Enterprise or from Edge, you'd have to actually spend it within Scotland. But they have what they call the International Scots Network. So I can call up my account manager at Scottish Enterprise and say, we're thinking of launching in Canada, and he'll go in this network and find Scots living in Canada, and I can talk to them. And it's so good. It's such a clever, open way of thinking about things. And we have an office in London, which is where most of the ad agencies are. So when we get Scottish funding, some of it pays wages in London, which on the surface might seem like a wrong idea, but actually means that we're kind of growing the pie for everyone. So I've been really impressed by that quite open global perspective.
There's even a place called Nova Scotia, right, in Canada. good network. Questions from the audience. For braving the rain, you deserve to ask questions. Sir, at the back, if you can shout, I'll then repeat your question because we have some people watching live, so don't take offense. It's just for the people watching on streaming. So there's a question on intellectual property. The patent from 2008, was that a patent in the US? And I guess there's a subsidiary question, which is why?
We filed that in the UK and then translated that into a European patent, and that gave us priority on a US patent. So you choose a geography to start, but then you go down a journey where you have a sort of time frame where you're able to then turn that international. At some point you have to choose, am I going to do all countries in the world? Because that becomes a very expensive exercise. We didn't do everywhere because we didn't have the money to do that, but we did do the US as part of that, along with Europe and the UK. And the approach we took at that point was to file what we thought of as a big book patent. So we wrote down all the things that we could think of around this space, because this was pretty speculative and early in this space. 2008, no one was thinking about electric vehicles powering it. And we wrote down all of the different complicated claim structure. And what that's meant is that later we can come back around and go, that one we subsidiary patent, and then filing that structure that we've chosen.
Super, thank you.
It was on power systems in homes. We do have patents on batteries, but the one that I showed was about how power networks in homes and how those could then be aggregated with many homes.
Yeah. So that's, and I'm sorry, I might just ask you to pick this one up one-to-one afterwards, because I want to create an opportunity for other questions as well. But maybe you guys can catch up offline. Brilliant. Other questions? Yes, on the front here.
Something that I've kind of run into on a couple ideas of my own, and then I see like Uber running into patents from like 15 years ago. How do you go about navigating that before you actually have that initial funding to retain IP attorneys?
So another question on a hot topic of intellectual property. So this is, how do you go about sort of navigating that? Zoe, maybe if you have any thoughts on that from the sort of overall ecosystem perspective, how can you help innovators to engage with this pretty complex subject?
I mean, because we take a bit of a, we don't get involved too much on the IP side. When we fund projects and companies like Moixa, it's up to them what, or in the way that some of the costs related to looking at patents are taking a look at it. If it's new IP, then that can be covered. Doing patents that way. We don't particularly have a department that helps with patent searches. We have a strong relationship with the Intellectual Property Office, and they're always there to help. So I think that's that main way. But when it's new IP that you're generating, that's something that can be included as part of the grant costs.
And Gillian, do you have any perspective on this from Data Lab?
I guess similarly to Innovate UK, when we fund a project, we're not interested in IP because we are not the best people to hold that. The companies are the best people to hold that, to then maximise the value. It does get very interesting when you're partnering industry up with academia.
And how does open source feed into that? Do you have a policy on that, or?
Not really. So, probably the Data Lab, we are not the right place. Depending on the university, some universities are much happier than others, shall we say, to say actually the company should own any resulting IP, others less so. So it really, for us, the challenge is when we talk with an organisation around a particular idea, we need to use our understanding of where the flexibility lies across that academic sector to do the right matching process. Yep. So that's really, really important. The other aspect that certainly we've found is you get into a lot of dialogue and debate about IP, and really in the cold light of day, I want to own the IP when, is there anything that you can actually protect there anyway?
Yeah, and as a factoid is the number of patents being filed within machine learning data spaces going off a cliff. It's really, really lower. Any other questions on other topics? You, sir, in the very bright jacket. Well done.
What are you currently doing, or what can you do more of to foster innovation at a younger age, so potentially university students or even at a secondary school level?
Great question. So how can we foster innovation at a younger age, either in the university or even younger in sort of school systems?
That's a really interesting question, and I'm sure Gillian can say more. But I mean, one thing we've been doing quite recently as part of our diversity and inclusion set of programs to kind of diversify the range of innovators that we engage with is we ran a Young Innovators program where we got people from 18 to 35 from backgrounds not traditional, the kind of people who maybe didn't go to university and went a very different route through life, but have got ideas and don't think contacts. They had some support they really could. So we ran that in partnership with the Prince's Trust, and we've now got young innovators taking proud of the fact we were doing that, and we're seeing some with other relevant departments about getting the 10 and 12-year-olds getting excited and becoming data scientists for the day and for the rest of their lives, potentially. So I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think this is such a huge area, and actually there's no one single organisation I think can touch every school child in the way that we ought to, in terms of inspiring them and enthusing them. So I think the role that we play, but also many other partners in Scotland. And I see Stephen here from Codebase, who do a huge amount of work. I think the biggest tech incubator in Europe. Is that right?
Just say yes.
But really supporting and encouraging entrepreneurship at all levels. We do a lot to support Founders for Schools, which is Sherry Kutu's company, who connect local schools with entrepreneurs and business people in their local area to go in and inspire school kids about their journey and their story. And having platforms like that, and they've now spun out Workfinder as well, which is a platform for school children to find work placements, not just go to your local X, but really meaningful work placements. I think if we all get behind these initiatives, because there's not a single organisation that can do it all, and we really need to help the teachers. I think it's really tough for teachers and career guidance. I mean, even in the tech industry, we can't keep up. So our responsibility as working in the industry is to support them, inspire our children to what they can do and what they're capable of, and making those connections for them.
And it's so impressive, isn't it? That my now 10-year-old daughter last year had a badge on her school blazer that said digital leader. And this year she has a badge on her school blazer that says digital apprentice. And I said, okay, interesting. So you've gone from a leader to an apprentice. Like, how does that work? Because, I thought that like maybe a leader was more senior than an apprentice. And I got totally slammed by her. She said, look, no, Daddy. A leader just talks about stuff. That's the kind of stuff that you do. An apprentice actually gets their hands dirty and builds stuff. That's what I'm doing. It's like, okay, I've just been owned. Like, this is fine.
I think that's great, but I think role models are pretty key as well. And I think just before the Young Innovators Programme, we did Women in Innovation, and we worked with Getty as well, with a photography exhibition, where we showed, and we can show to school kids and to people around the world, what women innovators look like, and perhaps challenge people's preconceptions. So I think there's something there. I think a lot more we can do in UKRI to engage people, whether they're in school or later on in their career and they want to change career and come into to STEM subjects or innovation. So yeah, great question.
Fantastic. And so I'm going to close with a quote that's come up just a couple of times on this stage today, which is the old Peter Drucker quote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And so maybe, Amy, Chris, in your environments, what do you do to try and create that culture of innovation? Well, maybe first, do you believe the quote? And second, what do you do to try and create that culture of innovation? What does that look like day to day by the coffee machine? Chris, well, maybe then finish.
We actually have every 2 weeks we have a breakfast, which is culture
you literally eat it. That's brilliant.
We kind of go, okay, what's good and what's bad about our culture, and how do we drive it forward? Literally taken from that quote. So that's something that we take to heart. I think for us, like, we've grown quite quickly over the last couple of years, and being very self-conscious about what you like about your company and what you think it makes it great, and holding on to that while you grow up as a company is quite hard and requires you to think about it quite self-consciously and be like, okay, that's the thing that's not right, and let's kind of like, how do we steer that in this environment that we're in?
Fantastic.
Doing it self-consciously.
Breakfasting your way to greatness. This is the and the equivalent.
Do you take 60 people for breakfast every 2 weeks?
No. It's a kind of invitation, open invitation. Anyone who wants to come and have breakfast.
What a lovely idea.
Me and one of the other senior guys. We set a theme and we have breakfast, usually about 10 people.
That's really nice. Oh, I'm going to steal that.
This is the Knowledge Network. This is the Knowledge Transfer Network in action.
Right. So we have just had our first company away day. So we're a team of 13, split across London and Scotland. So some of the people hadn't even met each other. So it was our first one, literally just Thursday and Friday just gone. And it was partly just let's reflect on what we love about us, like what we love about our team and what we want to become and who we want to be as individuals and who we want to be as a group. And then I think also digging down a little bit on how we can actually use the lean startup methodology, which is really all about, if you have an idea for an innovation, how can you bake it down to its most simple hypotheses? Like as Goodloop, our business, the most simple hypotheses of it was people would be happy to give some of their time and attention in exchange for a donation to charity. If that hypothesis isn't true, nothing else really matters. So that was the first one we focused on. So whenever someone comes to me and Daniel with an idea, it's like, well, come to us with an idea, the first hypothesis that underpins that idea, and how you're going to test that hypothesis. And if you have those three things, we can have a meaningful discussion about how it fits into the roadmap.
Fantastic. So keeping it simple, eating your breakfast, and getting those barriers out of the way. Please join me in thanking our presenters and panelists. And then we're going to have a...